stanzas and they take us on a journey in Little Red Cap. Ashton, where does this poem start? Where are we? Let's 3 words out for me. At the end of childhood, right. We're assuming that childhood's end isn't the name of a street. So straight away we're using a metaphor to say that we're at the end of something, but she's going to locate that end of childhood in a very kind of physical, geographical place, which we'll come to in a minute. From childhood's end, Holly, where does she go next? Into the... It's not a trick. Where does she go? Where does she go? She goes to the woods. It's not a trick. Sometimes we're not looking for some weird kind of out there answer. So the majority of this, the action of the poem takes place in the woods. Good. And at the end of the poem, Alfreda, what does she do? Yeah, so she leaves the woods, out of the forest. Interesting that it's now forest and not woods. Is that significant? She's not calling it woods anymore. She's singing and she's all alone. And look at some of the things that she's done. Alfreda's given us the first one. She's killed the wolf. Lovely. Hannah, what else has she done while she's been in woods? She's realised things. Here. She's realised things. Becca, what else has she done while she's been in the woods? Watched him kill a bird. Megan, what else has she done?
Killed the salmon.
She's killed a salmon. What's she doing? She's attacked a willow and a salmon, so she's destroyed things. Genevieve, what else has she done? She's picked flowers. What about on these first 4 stanzas? What's she done? Mimi?
She's having a drink with the wolf. So, like, I don't know whether I'm reading it wrong, but
She has a relationship with the wolf.
Yeah.
Where does that relationship, how does it start? What's happening in the second stanza? Dan? See?
I think she's sort of just describing it.
So she admires the wolf. Definitely. Genevieve?
she invites him.
I made quite sure he spotted me.
Yeah.
So she gets his... Ella, what happens next? Yeah. So she follows him into the woods. Mimi, what happens next? Keaton, go on, Keaton, what happens next?
Lots of things.
Do they engage in sexual relations?
they have sex. Always makes me laugh how pretty you lot get. Oh, she's clinging to his thrashing fur.
Like walking through the woods and she got in a branch.
How long's she in the woods for, Layla?
Thinking like a few years now.
Tell me how many. As it tells us in the poem. Tell me how many. Hannah? 10 years. It took 10 years in the woods. There she is. She's there for 10 years. So, all right. What's going on? What's going on in this poem? She's doing a lot of stuff, isn't she? So, we've got the structure now. She goes into the woods. She comes out of the woods. Quite a few things happen in between, and she's in the woods for 10 years. So this poem autobiographically refers to her relationship with the poet Adrian Henry, who was quite a lot older than her. So do we need to know that for the poem to make sense? I don't think we do. Is it helpful to us? Potentially, particularly as this poem opens the collection. Lucy, you got a pen? Are you ready to start annotating? Yeah. Okay. So, let's just remind ourselves from yesterday what's the dominant assessment objective. I want to hear it like a little chant like you're in primary school. AO2. AO2. How much is it worth? 75%. Oh, if you'd said Mrs. Ashmore at the end of that, my day would have been made. 75%, Mrs. Ashmore. So, let's go through it. Were you allowed to play out when you were a kid? Were there any rules? Stay on the green. You were allowed to play out, but you stayed on the green. So, did you have geographical boundaries? Don't cross the road.
Just like don't go over the hill, like it would just stay on the side.
Don't go over the hill. Don't leave the garden. don't go out of the garden. Yeah, we lived on a very busy road when the girls were growing up, so they couldn't play on the front. That's what we used to call it. I don't know if you still do. We used to, can we play on the front? And where I lived when I was growing up, it's all been knocked down now. Behind our house were fields and a railway line and woods, and there was a bridge over the railway line, but you didn't go over that because there were glue sniffers on the bridge, and you had to be careful over the woods because there were dodgy people. And if you played on the front, that was all right, because there was like it was a bus terminus, so there was like a big bit of green, and so you could quite safely play around there. But I wasn't allowed past Beverly's house at the bottom when I was younger, and actually I never really went past our house because there was a mad Jack Russell called Bootsy who'd bitten my sister. So we just played from my house down to Beverly's, and sometimes at the entrance path. And then as you get older, you're allowed more and more freedom, aren't you? Can you remember the first time you were allowed to go into town on your own with your friends? Maybe you went swimming. I think that's a big thing in Darlington, that people are allowed to go swimming with their friends on their own. Are you allowed to get the bus into town on your own? Go on. Just go to the cornmill, the shopping centre. And then that starts to expand, doesn't it? So I remember the first time Emily got the train up to Newcastle, where my sister was meeting her at the other end. I was like, we made sure it wasn't one that stopped at Durham. So it was just literally get off the next stop. And she said, Mum, I did not sit down. I just stayed by the door the entire time, just in case I missed my stop. So then, Millie, when I hear about what your younger sister does, travelling around the country, she's fearless, absolutely fearless, isn't she? So I think what Duffy's tapping into here is that often our physical boundaries are aligned with our emotional maturity boundaries. Most of you will be ready to go to university or to leave home or to get a job. Some of you won't. There's nothing wrong with that. As you all know, my daughter isn't. She stayed and done another year. She'll be 19. I don't know if she'll be ready. We're all ready at times, right? At 21, I got on a plane on my own and went and lived in America. If you told me when I went to school that I'd be able to do that, I'd have laughed in your face, because I wouldn't have known how to get the bus to Newcastle. Like, my world was very small when I was younger. So here, at childhood's end, this lovely, what we see is her moving from the safety of the houses, which are petering out, into first playing fields, so opportunities for play. But what else is hinted at the end of childhood with a factory? Sarah Lily? Work, the world of work. And then, I mean, do we all know what allotments are? Yeah, a plot of land, often rented out by the council, now obviously by private landlords as well, usually by the council, for you to garden and usually to grow your own stuff. Less of the old, I've got an allotment. Yeah, I don't, actually, it's Eddie's and his mum's, I don't go in it very often. But these allotments, interestingly, have been kept like mistresses by kneeling married men. So we've got the world of like play, we've got the world of work, and we've also got the world of Ashton. The allotments are kept like mistresses. I'll come back to you. Hannah? Patriarchy, right. Go on, there's something else, so I think, going on there. Other Hannah? Yeah. So, do you know the word clandestine? Like secretive. Mistresses are secrets, aren't they? So in just a few short words, Duffy manages to evoke this image of leaving one physical and emotional place and moving into another. Why is the railway line silent? Not used because what? Hasn't been on it before? Or, come on, a bit more. The trains aren't on it anymore. So what does that tell you about the place that she's in? No trains are stopping there. It may be impoverished, not important, a place that she wants to leave. The hermit's caravan, you came at last to the edge of the woods. Tell me, all of that, I want you to think very carefully about, or notice how Duffy uses punctuation. Or what technique is being used in those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines? Predominantly enjambment, isn't it? I know we've got some commas, but predominantly enjambment, kind of helping us understand her movement is continuous. Comes to the edge. She's at the very edge of the woods, and it was there that I first clapped eyes on the wolf. So she has the agency, she sees him. And what is this wolf doing? He stood in a clearing, reading his verse out loud in his wolfy drawl, a paper in his hairy paw, red wine staining his bearded jaw. Right, what can you hear? Can you hear there? Holly, can you hear any words talking to each other? Right, I'll read it out again. Everyone have a listen. He stood in a clearing, reading his verse out loud in his wolfy drawl, a hairy paw, red wine staining his bearded jaw. Dan? So which words are rhyming? Yeah, so that internal, drawl, paw, jaw. Tell me about the line, red wine staining his bearded jaw. Who drinks red wine? Older people. Right. I know, mainly, you might all enjoy a glass of red wine when you're old enough to drink. But it's not normally the drink of choice for most younger people who should go for an apple ties. Correct. Love an apple ties. But go on, who else drinks red wine? Yeah, middle class. Yeah, it's an adult drink, isn't it? Oh, I can't wait to get a glass of red wine after dinner. And why is it staining his bearded jaw? What imagery is being evoked there, Keaton? Of blood. Yeah. So we've met our wolf. Little Red Riding Cap's gone into the woods and she's met her wolf. But what's different? What's different to the story? She finds him. On Megan?
She's like the one initiating.
And she's the one being proactive in initiating it. She's gone to, autobiographically, she's gone to a poetry reading. She's found Adrian Henry, right? What big ears he had, what big eyes he had, what teeth. But there's no tone of danger, is there? In the interval, I made quite sure he spotted me. Things starting to change. Then let's look at this list of how she describes herself. Sweet 16, never been, babe, waif. And bought me a drink, my first. Dan C, do you want to pick any of those words and just tell me about them?
I think the fact that it's saying like sweet 16, it's like very young, growing up.
Yeah.
It's like very innocent and not aware of what can happen.
Is she innocent though? I mean, she's gone to poetry reading, made sure he spotted me. Perhaps naivety, yeah. I don't even know if she's that naive. What does never been mean? What word what word usually follows never been? Never been kissed. Never been kissed. So a suggestion there of like virginity. Babe. Right, babe. Doesn't mean that, does it? A babe in arms. That's a word from fairy tales, isn't it? Babes in the wood. Young. But it can also be like a hot babe. And waif. No, not heard of that. Anyone heard of waif before? Well, to be waif-like is to be very thin. And if you're a waif and stray, or homeless, bit lost. So how is she presenting herself to him? Go on, Millie.
Sort of like she's got nothing, she's sort of weak. Like she wants to present herself to him as weak.
So that he can do what?
Help her.
Take care of her. Yeah. Oh, look. And bought me a drink, my first. Why does she have my first open the next stanza? Why doesn't it just end that one? Come on, let's have a think. Hannah? What those are then? Right. So it tells us that this isn't just going to be her first drink that she has, but the first of many experiences. You've just exemplified what you do in your essays. You tell, so when you said, so it could mean many things, but then you don't tell me what those many things could be, right? First of many. You might ask why. Interesting use of second person there. Why is the shift? Here's why. Poetry. The wolf I knew would lead me deep into the woods, away from home, to a dark, tangled, thorny place lit by the eyes of owls. I crawled in his wake, my stockings ripped to shreds, scraps of bread from my blazer snagged on twig and branch, murder clues. Okay. So she knows that he's going to take her from home. It's presented in typical fairy tale fashion, a dark, tangled, thorny place lit by the eyes of owls. What does I crawled in his wake mean? What's wake? Yeah, because what leaves a wake behind it? Right, so, well, a ship leaves, you know, when a ship is moving and you see that water come off in like the bits, that's the ship's wake, right? So she's following in his movement. But you're right, Mimi, it also has those connotations of the gathering after a funeral, and it also could mean to wake up. So it's doing three different things at once. So the path, the funeral, and to awake. And that links with these murder clues. So what has been killed in this poem? Danby? Yeah, her innocence. Right. Has it been murdered though? Let's look here at stockings. What, these stockings have been ripped to shreds. Who wears stockings? Girls? Lucy, tell me about stockings. What are stockings? They're like tights. Yeah, okay. So, I'm kind of glad that you almost don't really know what so if you think, before tights were invented, we had like nylons. We didn't have the gusset. They'd go up your leg like a tight, but just one, and then you'd wear a suspender belt, and they're seen as very sexy. Yeah, very sexy. Desperately uncomfortable, very drafty, but very sexy because they leave the top of the thigh exposed. But stockings can also just be like schoolgirl stockings, like tights or high socks. So it always makes me laugh on American programs when they talk about the man wearing his suspenders, but they mean braces. I'm like, it's not what I do. So it's working again on those two levels, the part of the school uniform, but also that sexy dress up. Ooh. I lost both shoes, but got there, wolf's lair, better beware. Lesson 1. Well, who's giving the lessons? He is, yeah. Lesson 1 that night, Breath of the Wolf in My Ear, was the love poem. I clung till dawn to his thrashing fur, for what little girl doesn't dearly love? We might substitute Bad boy. Ooh. Then I slid from between his heavy matted paws and went in search of a living bird. White dove. Now this, it starts to get potentially a bit tricky here. She finds this white dove, and we need to think about what it might symbolise. Because this dove flies straight from her hands to his open mouth, whereupon he devours it.
White doves are usually represented as like innocence and peace.
Yeah?
And as I say, it's in her hands originally, as I say, it's hers. And then it leaves and flies into his mouth, which he devours, which symbolizes he is the one that's described innocence.
That's a lovely interpretation, Keaton. I really like it. Someone give me another one. What's she looking for? What does she want to become?
She wants to become something special to him.
Right.
Perhaps that she offers up herself to him.
Mhm.
Doesn't care. It's not too late.
So he's like dismissive of that, and he destroys it.
I think because he took away her innocence, she's trying to compensate by getting more innocence to keep him
Mhm.
attracted to her.
I agree with that. I like that, Alfreda. Mimi, and then Hannah.
The way that it's gone straight from her hands to his mouth is obviously that she's kind of giving him the job.
Mhm.
So like how she like followed some of the poem and said, I'll get attention, and then she followed him.
Right.
So she's giving him.
She's offering him something. I like that as well, Hannah.
Like she wants to become like a woman. So she's like giving him a child and
Absolutely. Can you all go back, please, to the third stanza and the first line? What does she want to become, Ella? Third stanza, first line. What does she want to become? A poet. You might ask why. Here's why. Poetry. She doesn't say sex. She doesn't say love. She doesn't say relationship. Poetry. So what might that white dove be? Paper. Her writing. Her creativity. One bite, dead. How nice, breakfast in bed, he said, licking his chops. Look what's happened there with the punctuation. How emphasising that dismissive tone. Let's see that. Right. As soon as he slept, I crept to the back of the where a whole wall was crimson, gold, aglow with books. Words were truly alive on the tongue, in the head, warm, beating, frantic. Music. So this is where she starts, I think, to develop her creativity. This is where words were truly alive. But she can't be the poet that she needs to be if she stays with him. In fact, what do those 3 lines suggest is happening to her? But then I was young, and it took 10 years in the woods to tell that a mushroom stoppers the mouth buried corpse. Lucy? What might she be suggesting is happening to her? She's becoming too kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Accustomed. Passive, yeah. Anything else going on with that? Look at the images. What do mushroom go on? Dead things. Not always, but love mushrooms. Sorry, little aside. That birds are the uttered thought of trees. And then what's going on here? That a greying wolf howls the same old song at the moon. Year in, year out. Season after season. Same rhyme, same reason. Dan? Yeah, she's bored of him, isn't she? Greying wolf howls the same old song. Ah, it comes to us all. I have a bit of pity for the grey wolf here. So, what does she do? I took an axe. Now, this is where, and you'll have to indulge me, I guess, a bit. But this is where I'm going with my interpretation of it, right? How do you come up with new things, new ideas? Yeah. Oster's obsessed at the moment with taking things apart to see how they work. I think it's pretty common for a 3-4-year-old to want to investigate. Unfortunately, when he does that with living things, little insects, it's a bit... I don't encourage this. What did he do it to the other day? Something of one of the girls. I think one of the most damaging things that you can ever have in your life is the idea that you should keep doing something because you've always done it that way. Particularly if you maybe think about your own behaviours, and I say this from experience. Sometimes the best thing we can do is really, and I don't mean anything as dramatic as getting on a plane to go to America to be an au pair, right? It doesn't have to be as dramatic as that, although that's what I needed. I needed a complete break from this country and my family. But sometimes what you need is just to go, hang on, do we have to keep doing it like this just because we have? So if you think about those images about women, they're very traditional images of romantic poetry, aren't they? They're cliches all. So what does she do to them? She cuts them down. I took an axe to a willow to see how it wept. I took an axe to a salmon to see how it leapt. I took an axe to the wolf as he slept. One chop, scrotum to throat. And saw the glistening virgin white of my grandmother's bones. So if we had that white dove, as Millie said, perhaps representing the paper of her creativity, this white is picked up here with the idea that perhaps she's trying to liberate those female voices of the past that have been devoured. Oh, it's a good idea, isn't it? Sexy. So here wolf becomes a metonym for the usurpation of female creativity by the patriarchy. Oh, I'm going to write that down. I'm on fire today. I think it's that little granola bar I had. Oof, that's it. Peaks. I'll have to go home. Got nothing left in me for this afternoon. I filled his old belly with stones. I stitched him up. Out of the forest I come with my flowers, singing all alone. Oh. Do you like it more now that we've gone through it, or less? More. Because sometimes when you start to pull a poem apart, you're like, But I think this week almost let it settle, go back and be like, oh yeah. Oh, she's good, isn't she? What do you think the flowers signify at the end?
I thought it would be because she's got flowers and she's singing. I can kind of imagine a skipping. I thought it would be her regaining her innocence.
Regaining her innocence. I like that.
Her discoveries and her experience.
Her discoveries and her experiences, Layla?
I think it might symbolize a new start life for her.
Yeah, yeah, lovely.
I like the idea that when she comes out, obviously she's singing, which would indicate that she's happy. And she's alone, and at the beginning of the poem she was alone.
Yeah,
But in a sense that she felt something was lacking and she felt wayward, but now
Yeah.
she comes out alone and she's happy to be.
and if she's singing, what she found? Her voice. Ah, she's found her voice.